move there, ref. That's he got the ball. Good evening, Tottenham fans. Welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys, Dave and Jack, bringing you back Hotspur Social. Now that the two boys, Sam and Johnny, are back from globetrotting all across the world. Absolutely great to have them back. Few things to talk about this evening. Maybe just a little show build up to the North London Derby. Maybe ease some of the tensions. We will be talking about Cristian Romero, some of the reports that have come out the last couple of days about the interest in him with 2 years left on his contract. Are we entering another Harry Kane sort of situation? We'll also be talking about Tottenham's away form, like Johnny has highlighted on Twitter. 2 wins out of the last 11. And maybe a little bit about Ange Postecoglou. Is there pressure on him? And we'll also be talking about the stuff that came out with David Pleat. Basically about the data-led scouting model compared to eyes and ears on the ground. And let's see where everybody's thoughts are on that. And of course, guys, this video is brought to you by NordVPN, one of the fastest streaming services, if not the fastest stream This video is brought to you by NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the internet, guys. We do have a deal with them for this month, so make sure you check that out. The link is pinned in the chat. Get on that, get across, get our link, and basically save yourself a lot of money by changing your streaming providers. But Jacko, over to you, my man. How are you keeping?
I'm doing okay, Dave. I haven't traveled around the world as much as these two below me have, but I did actually move apartments, and so I have a new white wall, boring background for people to enjoy. Eventually, it will be filled by Spurs kits and much better backgrounds than you're used to, but I'm doing all right. Looking forward to some stuff to talk about, maybe other than the impending North London Derby conversations, which we will be having definitely very soon. But yeah, looking forward to this. It's good to have this show back.
No, it is. It's absolutely great to have this show back. I have missed Johnny. Johnny, of course, you've been halfway across the world, spreading the good word of Tottenham Hotspur, whilst also visiting family. Good to have you back. Sir, how are you keeping?
All good, all good. It was very frustrating trying to watch the games because I was in Asia. I was like 7 hours ahead, and I just, for the life of me, it was a nightmare trying to get the stream. I got like 8 seconds and it jammed up, then 8 seconds and it jammed up, and I missed the entire first half of the Everton game? Yeah, the Everton game, the entire first half. And people were messaging me, what do you think? What do you think? Well, first of all, it's like late. It's very late in the day already. I had no idea. I managed to get bits and pieces in the second half. I had a great time, but I literally could not wait to get home. And I arrived home with severe jet lag just in time for the Newcastle game. Got into the house, tried to keep my eyes open with matchsticks. And it was a bit of a disappointing result. But we're back and we're ready. The season starts properly now. I know we've had 3 games, but, this bloody international breaks, whoever invented them, the Nations bloody League. No one wants Nations League. Nobody. So we're back and hopefully onward and upward, and lots of games to be commentating on. What we love to do. Okay, guys?
Oh, 100%. What is it? I think 7 games in 20-odd days, until the next international break. We've got a huge period coming up. And, I know some people probably say it's early, but I'd say it's season-defining. If you want to be in chance with honours at the end of the season, you've got to stay in the competitions. And we League Cup, we've got Europa League, and we've also got Premier League coming up as well. Action over the next 20-odd days. So really, really important time for Tottenham. And some would argue make or break for our season. Maybe Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Tottenham Hotspur as well. But, Johnny, I will say, at least you had some wins over the international break. I've had to endure 2 grueling defeats with barely any shots on target. So my misery has continued from that Newcastle defeat. But down to Sam, I know he was away in Cyprus or Greece, 1 or 2, hopefully not Greece, because they bet us last night. But how are you keeping, Sam?
I'm keeping very well, sporting my new kit, ready for the derby. Just taking it as it comes, one day at a time, hoping that the bassoon news that came out the other day is not too serious, and trying to contain my excitement that Arsenal are going to be missing a couple players, but just going through it, and glad to be back on. Good to see you back, Johnny. You look very tanned, and can't say I'm not jealous. I won't lie, even though I was away not too long ago. So I'm excited and ready to be back.
Oh, no, it's absolutely great to have you back. if Johnny gets any more time, they'll have a new action man brought out after him, at this point. But, absolutely great to have you back, Sam. You're looking very good in the jersey, my man, I have to say. It's a really nice jersey. I think you should stand up and give everybody a full view. You're not.
Yeah, it's El Clasico. It's a classic. It's a classic. HP.
Absolutely brilliant.
Pony, yeah? Is it Pony? Yeah.
Pony, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an absolute
And that wasn't
classic.
reference, Cockney rhyming slang for pony and trap, okay?
But look, it's never a dull time in the Spurs fan base. Lots of different opinions floating around the place on what's going on. So we'll hand over to Jack and we'll get going.
Yeah, let's get it off straight away. And we're going to start first with Cristian Romero. He just had, a recent kind of article come out from, I believe, Gaston Edul, who I think is an expert on sort of the South American players. Tottenham, in fact, did receive approaches from the likes of Manchester United, PSG, and Real Madrid for Romero this last summer. Edul has claimed via his Twitter account that Spurs simply rejected, though, the notion of even selling Romero and even refused to put a price on him for this summer, such as their regard for the defender. This summer, Romero does enter, though, the final 2 years of his contract. So to you, Johnny, with Tottenham's receiving interest from the big clubs, PSG, Real Madrid, Manchester United, how likely is it that the club will decide to keep him or sell him, considering their previous decision to sell Harry Kane? Bear that in mind. They did end up biting the bullet and they did sell the £100 million, pound to Bayern Munich for Harry Kane. So will they do the same with Romero?
To me, he's our Monet, or for a modern day, he's our Banksy. Okay, priceless, right? I know he gets a lot of stick because he loses it sometimes, but he's a leader. I don't think there's a better defender in the world right now than Cristian Romero. That's my opinion. There's a lot of people who wouldn't agree with it. I just think he's an unbelievable player. To forget just the defensive way he plays defensively, the way he brings the ball out, his passing is unbelievable. The goal contributions when his team's not doing it, he drags them across. And I know the other day when he rushed out in the Newcastle game to try and press, but personally, I don't think that's solely his fault, because you're meant to press as a bloody unit, not on his own. He ran out and the rest was still standing there. I thought he would potentially go next season. So that last year, I think he would go when he had 2 years left on his contract. I'd love to make him a permanent. Personally, I think he should be our club captain and Sonny should be our club ambassador, right? There's a difference, but it's still important roles. Sonny's our ambassador and him as our captain. And I think Spurs should be doing anything and everything to make him the highest paid player at the club. And, we've reduced the wage bill by over £30 million this year. It's time to splash some of that money on a guy who, in my opinion, is still not even in the peak of his career. He's going to get better.
Do you think he will sign on the dotted line, though, Johnny, even if Spurs were to offer him this monster pay packet, given the fact that he's got the hunger for trophies now? And if he doesn't see this project kick on, he'll be another one who's had so many different managers in his time and in his time at Tottenham Hotspur. Do you see him maybe having the taste to maybe make that desirable move to Real Madrid, where he knows he's going to be picking up Champions Leagues and La Ligas and stuff like that?
Well, I didn't think he would go this year because I knew before it came out and the actual wife, he announced it, that his wife was pregnant again. So I knew he wasn't going to go. You're not going to uproot it. It's kids are there. But I think next year's a distinct possibility because our club lack ambition. Now, there's levels of ambition, okay? I don't think the signings that we've made signifies to Romero that this is a club that's going to be in the Champions League, that it's going to be contesting titles and Champions League. And I think, how much longer will you accept that as a player of his quality? How do you put a price on it? I've got no idea. For me, he should be the most expensive defender ever sold. But knowing Levy, we'd probably get 120 million and spend 20 million on some guy from the Championship who's coming through. I think it's vital we keep him. I think it's going to be a struggle. I've got to be honest with you. For me, he's the leader. He's the guy that makes his club tick right now. I think it's imperative we get him to sign, but I think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think he's worth probably well over 100 million to Spurs at this moment. I actually laughed at Daniel Levy for, I think we got some rumor, it might not have been true, that he did quote something around 150 million basically to Real Madrid, which I thought was, quite baller actually, to just sort of come back with that sort of response.
I think 120 million is fair. I'll be honest with you. When you look at Van Dijk and the money that's gone for other players, I just think the problem that we have, he will not be sold to a club in this country because FFP will not allow £100 million signing. To make £100 million signing, you'd have to sell a lot of players to offset it. So the likelihood is it would be a PSG, a Bayern Munich, or a Real Madrid.
Yeah. I mean, 150 million is a huge one. But you think about the quality of Cristian Romero, especially what I think he brings in possession. He's one of the best passing center backs, I actually think, in the world at the moment. He's just so technically sound. And then we know he's kind of like a Pepe or a Sergio Ramos, where he has that nastiness about him. Certainly a club like Real Madrid would probably pay that much money for if they ever do get that sort of cash. But for you, Sam, I mean, Harry Kane, we ended up, selling him for 100 million. We eventually conceded and gave him away to Bayern Munich when it started to get a little nervous about whether we were going to let him go for free or not. Do you think something similar is going to happen with Romero, where Daniel Levy is going to have a tough decision about whether to let him go on a free or if he's going to end up, selling him for big bucks? Or do you think Cristian Romero will be a true Spurs man and stay forever?
Look, I think the romantic in me wants the love affair to continue with Romero. I do remember saying at the beginning of the season that when those Real Madrid comments were coming out, that I could see him leaving at the end of the season if we, again, don't win anything, or even, maybe get to a final of something and give him a chance to win silverware. Because, at that stage, it puts the ball a bit in the players' court to say, you're one of our big players and you couldn't do it when it mattered, right? And I think that he is one of those players that would potentially see it that way, that, he let himself down by not bringing the best he could and dragging the team over the line. Look, I mean, I think it's a slightly different situation to Kane. Obviously, Kane's supposed to be the Spurs man through and through. But, the last few years of his tenure with us, he wanted to go, didn't he? He didn't really hide the fact that he wanted to go and win trophies. And whether that was with us or not, he needed to do that in his career. He's getting on now. But with Romero, obviously there's a slight difference in the fact that he's won trophies internationally. But for a player of his caliber, you'd be disappointed if he ended up winning no club-based trophies. That would be a bit of a travesty as well. So I'll sort of reiterate my point from the beginning of the season. I do think that we need to show him some sort of ambition, that we want to be a club to be taken seriously in these trophies. I think that if they're not already behind the scenes trying to negotiate with him before it even gets to that 2-year mark, then what are they doing, honestly? Because, I mean, Anne just said it a few times, right? He wishes he had a full team of Romeros. So you need something to keep him there, but clearly Ange has a lot of faith in him. And if we do let him go, you could see Ange being pretty frustrated, especially seeing as, it took us however long to actually buy a competent centre back. We got into now 3 windows. Well, I guess January we did buy Dragusin, so I'll take that back. But we've had 2 summer windows where we've needed to buy centre backs, and we've signed the bare minimum basically. Obviously, I don't think anyone's saying they're disappointed with the signing of Van der Ven. If anything, he's almost a godsend for us. But if we let go a player like Romero, there's very little guarantee, especially with the past sort of showing that the club has done, that we'd actually bring someone in who could even come close to matching that importance for the team. And, you know, as Johnny said, people can complain about Romero, you know, he's rash. I did personally think that he was at fault for that first goal. The second goal, I think, is kind of 6-1, half a dozen another. Everyone was kind of sort of caught out. But it wasn't necessarily that he pressed forward for that goal. I have no problem with that, and I agree the team should have pressed with him. It was more that when Basuma then filled the role, that the space that he left, he didn't get back like nearly quick enough, and in fact he was doing what a lot of, especially myself, people were complaining about Basuma last season, where, you know, he gets into the position to potentially do something and then just doesn't make that final burst to actually make the challenge. And, you know, that's not something that you really sort of throw Romero's way in terms of criticism. But that one, I did think, you know, he let me down a little bit. But look, on the whole, obviously the first couple of years, he missed so many games through injury and suspension. But last season, he showed us just how important a defender and player personality that he can be for us. And hopefully,
can I interject there,
us.
Sam? Sorry to talk over you there, but about those injuries, when he signed from Atalanta, he had an issue with, he has a muscle condition. And if he overplays, it triggers it and he gets injured. He's had it. Spurs knew about it when they signed him, and they didn't manage it well enough in those early stages because they didn't really understand it. They knew he had it, but didn't think it'd be much of an issue. Now, when you travel, I'm sure, you know, we've all traveled before, but when you go long haul, it doesn't matter if you're flying on a private jet. Your muscles, everything's different when you're up there flying, you know, 14, 15 hours there and another 12 hours back, and you're on coaches and you're on buses. That's not good for your muscles. It really isn't. And I think that, coupled with Spurs understanding how this triggered, didn't help. I think they're trying to manage it more this season. And I'm really hoping that our medical team sort their shit out, because let's be honest, right? You know, I'm not saying it was it, but Solanke, he hadn't been injured for 3 years until he came to us. You could go and have the cleanest bill of health, right? You could be the fittest guy in the world. Come to Spurs, and within the week you're injured. You know, I'm hoping that they manage him well. There's a lot of games coming up this season, and we're going to need to rest him. And I'm hoping when we play Coventry next week that he is not playing and that we bring in others. But my worry is we've got rid of them all. We've sent them all away. You know, I think Ashley Phillips should have been kept as part of the squad and learning because, yes, do I think that Ashley Phillips could be playing against Coventry? 100%. Give your players a rest. Sorry, Sam, carry on, mate. I've just wanted to fill in on that info on him.
No, I was pretty much done. I was, you know, I kind of echoed the same sentiment as well. You know, we brought in Dragusin last season, and annoyingly for, I'm sure, all Spurs fans, it was at the end of basically our injury crisis. So by the time Dragusin was ready to play, we had our first choice centre-backs back again. So he just sat there sort of collecting dust on the bench. So you're right. Like, you know, if he doesn't play Dragusin against Coventry, and, you know, maybe if he doesn't want to play Adoji to give him a bit more time, he plays Mickey at left back and he brings Ben Davies in. I can see that happening. I'd also be a bit annoyed if he doesn't. I'd also be a bit annoyed if he doesn't bring Jed Spence in to give Porro a bit of rest, because, again, you know, Porro is one of our most important players, you know, so it would be highly disappointing, especially after the sort of pre-season that Spence has had, to overplay Porro and end up, you know, losing him for a chunk of the season.
Yeah, no, and with Romero, we just need to be able to keep him as healthy as possible because he comes across to me as a guy who wants to play every game, whether he's injured or not. He does have that sort of attitude where you want to play in everything. But Dave, on sort of Romero and maybe his recent form, what do you make of the fact that the recent sort of transfer rumors, could that be affecting maybe his recent form? Because we all love him, you and I absolutely adore him and praise him, but he's kind of has been at fault to some degree for all 3 goals that we've conceded so far this season. He's at least played some sort of part in them. So what do you make of the fact that maybe these transfer rumors could be affecting maybe his performances, or would you kind of disregard that?
No, I think when you look at it personally, when it comes to Cristian Romero, he's not going to have the same loyalty to Tottenham Hotspur that Harry Kane had to Tottenham Hotspur. And that's what kept Harry Kane here for so long, was because of his loyalty and the affection that he had for the club and the fan base. With Romero, although he's adored and he's absolutely loved by the Spurs fan base, he ain't going to have that emotional tie to Tottenham. And I do think, the interest in especially someone like Real Madrid, I think it's hard not to turn your head, to be brutally honest. You've seen it down the years, Gareth Bale, Luka Modric. Once Madrid come calling, teams do not say no. They tend to go because they know that when they make that move, they're going to be in the hunt for trophies season in, season out. At Tottenham Hotspur right now, there's no guarantee of that. We're all hoping that we can go and challenge for some trophies this year, but there's no guarantee of it. And I do think when you look at the start of this season, it's lapses of a concentration from Romero. And I do think that maybe the interest around them has had something to do with that. And I do blame him for the goal at Newcastle. I know what the boys are saying. But for me, Romero's been in this backline the longest. He's been here longer than Porro, Adoji, and Van de Ven. It's up to him to call the shots across that backline. 3 of them wanted to go in behind and cover in behind. He wanted to go and play the offside trap. And that stinks of lack of communication. And that's where I think I do blame Romero, because he's been here the longest. He should be grabbing hold of them and making them shots, making them calls. But as Spurs fans as well, I don't think we really realize how much of a rare player we have on our hands right now in this modern day and age. When you talk about a centre-back that plays the way every modern manager wants to play, out from the back, this guy can do it in abundance. Not only can he dribble the ball, but he can also spray it about. He's got a good passing range. He can also, link up with players, 1-2s. He's good up the final end. He scores us at least 4 or 5 goals every single season from a centre back. And defensively, he's solid. When he's concentrated, like he was against Everton, he's absolutely one of the best centre backs in the world on his day. Fans asked him about his rashness. Well, he's cleaned that up. Fans asked him, could it be a bit more dominant in the air? He has answered that question. He has become more dominant in the air. But what we've got is all them attributes, plus a guy that hits hard in the modern day and age, which is lost in this day and age of football. We see so many times, maybe not as much recently, but Jack, under Conte, how many times were, like, especially at West Ham, he hit Mikel Antonio. He didn't want to know. He hit St. Maximum at Newcastle. He didn't want to know after that. This guy's an absolute rarity in modern day football. And I would hope the fact that we've made significant reductions in the wage bill that for this season than what we were carrying in years gone by. The money is there to offer this guy a substantial contract to keep him here. And I hope the club don't try and lowball him here. I think we're at a point now, the club have to try and give this guy more or less what he's asking. Yes, there's going to be some negotiation in between. But when you hear an interview that Danny Rose gave over the last couple of days that come out, where he was saying, although where Tottenham were performing in the league, club players at West Brom were being paid more than them and stuff like that. That can no longer be the case. We have to start playing these players what they're worth, or they will look for moves out of this football club. So it's now on Daniel Levy to do everything he can to persuade this guy. I agree with Johnny. I'm not sure this summer transfer window has done anything to convince this guy to sign on the dotted line that this club is going to push forward for trophies. It's one thing the manager and the players are coming out and saying it, but it's another thing delivering it and having the right pieces of the puzzle at your disposal to be able to go and win it as well, which I think maybe we're left short. You've got to remember, this guy's off the back of winning a World Cup and a Copa America. He has the taste for trophies now. He has the taste for hunger and success. And he's not going to want to give that up to hopefully try and help get Tottenham over the line when there's better projects available for him to put them medals into his cabinet. So this one is on the club. He's got 2 years left on his contract. They need to get a renewal over the course of this season. I would argue before Christmas, before big dogs start circling and getting into him, his agents and stuff like that. And it's imperative, because one thing is, Daniel Levy, when he said when he was building this stadium, it was so we could compete with the big clubs, offer our players the wages, etc., and keep them here, not sell our best players. If he does end up selling Romero, that's Harry Kane and Romero back to back, and he's just sold a lie to the Tottenham fan base.
Yeah, it'd be another lie sold to the Spurs fan base. And like you said, Romero has gotten the taste of winning. But Dave, I was going to fire this one at you so you could cheer up Ryan's spirits, but maybe I'll have to get Johnny or Sam to do that. He's saying we will lose 3-0 on Sunday. Daniel Levy is a joke. Ange out. Levy out. I want Pochettino back. I mean, someone's got to lift Ryan's spirits here. We're still, practically a week away from the derby. I mean, you got to have some sort of quiet confidence.
Listen,
maybe
Ryan,
you get more nervous by Saturday.
Listen, Ryan, I don't think they've lost God knows how. I don't remember the last time Arsenal lost away from home. I don't know what the record is, but they haven't stopped scoring. If someone can tell me when Arsenal lost away from home, it'd be great. I know Spurs haven't beaten a top 10 team, top 10, not top 4, not top 6, but a top 10 team since the 28th of December when we beat 10-man Villa 4-0. I just threw the 10-man in, but listen, we'll just call it that was the last time we won. But let's be serious, right? If we cannot at home, without Declan Rice, without Odegaard, without Calafiori, without Marino, without Timber's a doubt, Tomiyasu is a doubt, and they're going to probably put Zinchenko maybe into the middle of the park to toughen it up. Maybe a little word about Russia in his ear that'll unsettle him. What I want is Romero to deliver a performance, assured, aggressive performance, but please do not lose your shit in the game. Please, right? Okay, let's keep it hard, but let's keep it contained. There should be for me, this is the best opportunity that we've had to beat Arsenal in a very long time. It's normally us that's going to the big games and we're missing this one and that one and this one and that one. I've got no interest in Arsenal fans who are all messaging me, we don't have this. I said, well, that's the way it is. That was us our whole of last season.
Surprised they haven't asked for a reschedule,
yeah,
Johnny,
probably.
knowing their history.
COVID. Yeah, they come down with COVID. They've all got the flu. So I don't think there's any excuse for us, personally,
agree,
to lose on Sunday. I expect us to come away with the 3 points, because if we don't, the mood is going to change very quickly, because we got Coventry away, we got Carrier Bag, right? We got Man United away. We got that El Sacchio. That could have turned up into be El Sacchio, couldn't it? With him.
Do you know what? That's weird. That's weird, John. I was only saying that to Jack yesterday.
What's that?
I was only saying that to Jack yesterday. If things don't go right against Arsenal, the United game could be very well another El Sacchio.
Listen, I hope not. Listen, I hope he does well. You know what it's like on these channels, right? God forbid you should say anything. You can't actually say you're worried. You can't say anything negative and be Ange in or want Ange to succeed. I want Ange to succeed, but at the same time, I've got concerns. And let's be honest, we got a hard run of games. We got Brighton away, hard game. Man United away, not. We haven't got a great record there. Have we got, who else? We got Brentford at home.
Brentford away.
Thomas Frank, he always gives us a good game. So yeah, there's some tough games coming up between now and the international break. But this is the important one. This is the one. And this is why I got a bit annoyed with Ange last season when he got all upset about, the passion that was being shown and the importance of beating Manchester City. We should have had that importance when we played Arsenal at home, when it really mattered. But that didn't seem to bother him as much as us Spurs fans, quite happy for Man City to win. It's our opportunity. It's the best chance we're going to have to beat Arsenal, probably the whole of this year. Let's go and do it.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. I think, Ryan, hopefully it's the complete opposite, sir, that we get the 3-0 win. Maybe Daniel Levy goes into that fan forum probably a bit more open-chested or, kind of confident than he usually is when facing the Spurs fan base. And we also get a very confident Ange Postecoglou after the North London derby. And, if we need to lift your spirits, come on the fan show, my friend, and we'd be happy to try our best to lift your spirits ahead of this North London derby. Shamtan celebrating 4 months, saying, "Hey, Jack and Dave, hope you are good." And the panel doing very well, Shem, and hopefully you're doing okay ahead of this North London Derby week. Prepare your celebratory meals, maybe a good, nice Turkish kebab, something like that. I know Dave, usually enjoys that type of thing after a game, and thank you for 4 months of support. I feel like it's been a lot longer than that, Shem, so I feel like they're, shorting you here a little bit. So thank you for your support for this channel, my friend. And then we also have Paul Markey saying, "For my money, we should dump Johan Lange and his disciples and bring the man who knows what he's doing, the Don Paratici, as soon as possible."
Bring
What a story arc.
Don.
What a story arc
100%.
Paratici has had, Johnny, from Khan to now everybody's hero.
Yeah, listen, it was Don Fabio. It was Con Fabio. For me, he was always Don Fabio. Anyone who knows me knows he was the Don. When he turned up and I was telling everybody, I was just told to shut up. Didn't know what I was talking about. Let him do his stuff. And listen, when I analyse, yes, he's got a couple wrong, but when I analyse what he's done for this club and how many of Don's players are an important, integral part of this team, I'm not going to change my mind. But unfortunately, Scott Munn has come in, that well-known soccer man from I don't know, from the Olympics, and he's pushed everyone aside. Gabonini, who was an unbelievable scout, the guy who's responsible for bringing Destiny Udogie with him. He was the guy that brought him to Udinese, because he used to scout for Udinese and Watford. It's a shame. Gabby got forced out. He thought he was going to get DOF, and he wasn't. Steinson's gone. So there's only Scalding, and I think there's only Scalding left of those of the original ones that he brought in. So rather sad state of affairs, but it is what it is. Yeah. But I think if you'd have given him 140 million to spend, and just given it to Don Fabio, I would be really interested to see what he would have done with that money.
Look, when it I completely agree with you, Johnny, and that's where I was happy. I found you. I felt like me and Jack were the only ones out there, on a solo mission.
His name
in the middle of a sea, and Johnny comes across in his big oil tanker and picks us up. Singing the same message. I was glad, that someone else was seeing what we were seeing. And this is one of the biggest things I actually tried to get across in one of my recent videos about, are all these signings Ange Postecoglou signings? Because you hear it from both sides where, the ones who don't want Ange here, they're all his signings, they're useless. And the ones, that want to be positive, if Ange wants them, we have to get behind them. And the thing is, people never actually really understand how good Paratici was for Tottenham. Forget all the stuff surrounding him from Juventus and stuff like that, right? Forget all that. Focus purely what this guy done for Tottenham. Yeah, okay, like Johnny said, there was a couple of duds in there, Gill, Emerson, players like that to a degree. But the majority of this guy's recruitment for Tottenham has been absolutely exceptional. And not only that, some of the people that he's brought with him that have brought some great recruitment. Johnny spoke about Gabonini there. Not only was he crucial for Udogie, he was crucial behind the scenes, convincing the club to bring in Van de Ven. Absolutely crucial. Anyone that says I'm lying, it's out there in articles, it's public knowledge. Go and check it up. Paratici was crucial in identifying Vicario as Hugo Lloris's long-term successor. In fact, a lot of that summer transfer window was Gabonini and Paratici's recruitment. They've left. This summer has all been Johan Lang and Rob McKenzie. And when you look at what was being touted about what we were going for and what we delivered, I actually think Johan Lang is another Steve Hitchen, where he has all these grandiose ideas about bringing in these players. but I just feel like the guy doesn't know how to negotiate or have the contacts in the game to be able to get this over the line. Now, I know from my research that, since Paratici's gone, the club are heavily reliant on CAA base. From what I've found in my research, heavily reliant on CAA base, introducing, Johan Lang and that into the correct people in the game and stuff like that. He doesn't have the contacts that Paratici has. If he's using someone like CAA base to make them contacts, that says everything that I need to know, that he doesn't have them contacts himself. Paratici was a master at getting deals done. How many deals did we see structured? Okay, we don't have the money now, but what we'll do is we'll pay you next summer when we do have
Kulu,
the money.
or
And we
the
still
others,
brought,
there's so many.
Kulu, Poro, and we still brought in more players the next summer. Didn't have a knock-on effect to what we were doing in the transfer market. And I think this year, this is where I've become a lot unhappy, is all on Johan Lang and Rob McKenzie. They're the ones being out there scouting the players, identifying and using the data-led scouting. And like I said, I just don't think they know how to get deals over the line.
10 years.
Yeah.
Listen, Dave, 10 years at Juventus. This isn't 10 years at Wimbledon or Watford or some two-pot team. This is 10 years at one of the biggest clubs in world football, right? Serial winners, okay?
Yeah.
And, we should have been bowing at the ground when we got someone of that ilk. He was awarded Director of Football of the Year in, I think it was Dubai or Saudi or wherever it was.
Juventus hasn't been the same since he's left as well.
No, he hasn't been. And not only that, the players that he's brought in are worth more money than what we paid for them. And I'll tell you another thing. Lang, right? He was let go by Villa. Do Villa strike you as a team that's really struggling without him? Their recruitment has been fantastic this season. They needed to get rid of a player. They had 24 hours left to get rid of a player to meet the deadline for FFP. And then straight after the deadline of FFP of selling that player, they then brought in Anana to replace that player because that goes on the next year's accounts. They didn't waste any time, right? If we had identified Solanke as our number one target, as we have been led to believe, then that should have been done, the opening of the transfer window, and Solanke should have been on that plane flying out to Asia, right? Not being done and, we'll just throw him in at the deep end for the Leicester game is bullshit. Sorry,
He actually was in Asia. He was having a vacation in Japan while we were there at the same time.
Listen, the whole thing is is a farce. I'm sorry, I can't, and I do not believe that Johan Lang is the number one. I believe he's probably number 4. What actually happens is they identify the positions that they need, then they go out and they source through data the various players. And then those players are then bought, which have come out on the data, are then presented to Ange. And then Ange is the one who picks those players from the players that have been selected out of that data. That's the way it works. And quite honestly, I'm of the same. I do worry that Ange has the same talent ID as Steve Hitchen. Listen, I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I'm not overly impressed with 47 million for Brennan Johnson. I actually think Archie Gray is a really good player. I'm happy with Archie Gray. It's a lot of money, but I think he's going to be a really good player, and I'm very happy with Bergvall. The others, I worried about Maddison coming to the club. Got to be honest, he's a player that likes space. And quite honestly, there is no space in Ange Ball because everything's inverted, everything's vacuum packed. The midfield is really congested. And when you're the opposition, how do you stop them? Pack out that midfield, do a low block, pack out the midfield. There's no room. So what happens? Maddison has to drop deep. And Maddison's not a deep line playmaker. When he's playing for Leicester, he played behind Vardy in that pocket, in the hole behind, trying to release them, trying to play balls to break those lines. I don't recognise that player. Listen, I just hope it all goes well this season and it all starts to gel.
Yeah, I think the last point I'd make, Paul Markey, is that, Johan Lange still has a lot of time to try to convince maybe some of the doubters. But to a degree, Dave and I, from the moment he was hired, did say The reason he probably was brought in here, though, was to improve some of the homegrown recruitment, which I don't think Paratici had enough time really to address, but also was one that he technically didn't really, focus that much attention on, and they needed to desperately, Spurs. And so Johan Lange, to a degree, kind of thrived in that department over at Villa. And then he did bring in some of the younger talents, which I believe someone in the chat just mentioned, the likes of, Archie Gray, the likes of Lucas Bergvall, those sort of players. But those are ones that, we have to wait a bit longer. They're not necessarily for the here and now. So we'll see what Johan Lange can produce in the future upcoming windows. Artist T saying not even just Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly, I do want to be fair to Johan Lange in a way. It does have to be stressed that he does have a much difficult task than what Paratici did. Paratici more or less had a blank canvas to work with, right? But he's brought the club so far with a lot of his recruitment, and not a lot of people don't do a lot of his recruitment, which means Johan Lange then has the enviable task of trying to take us from 5th to champions, whilst also trying to get Daniel Levy to part with the money to do that. So he does have a difficult job on his hand. And look, like I said, although I'm not convinced he's the guy, but let's wait and see.
I'm going to give this one to Sam here because I feel like we haven't let him in yet. Not even just Romero. If we want to keep some of these players and maybe even Ange, this has to be the year. Sam, do Spurs need trophies or some type of success this season in order to keep some of our top players, including the manager?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't necessarily think that Ange would just be like, yeah, I win stuff in my second year. We've not won a trophy, so I'm out. He's worked his entire career. He's had hardships to get to this point. So I don't see him just, basically tearing up his contract and saying, F this, I'm out. Before I continue, I did just want to say, we do have to also remember that Paratici brought in Nuno. That's one thing we gotta remember. But
you can find a negative in any. Listen, you can find a negative in anything. I'll tell you one thing. You lay down his signings, land signings, and tell me how many of them. How much profit do you think you're going to make on 47 million on what's his name, Brennan Johnson? How much do you think you're going to make on Maddison? I just like to know how much we're going to make on some of these signings that he's made in comparison to the man.
I think that's the thing with homegrown, though, Johnny. You have to get it right for the most part, because for homegrown, you end up kind of paying over the top for players that might not really be worth that price. So if you are going to pay for them, they have to be worth, the big money that you'll fork over for homegrown.
Then if you flip it, though, like which players are you going to get serious recuperation and fees for under Paratici as well?
I think they're saying with Romero, Van
Where shall I go?
Udogie, Pedro Porro, etc.
Okay, 15 million for Udogie, 12 million for Papa Sarr, 17 million for Vicario. I mean, that's a good start, right? 45 million.
Yeah, for sure. The problem is for Lang is that he's going to be. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily a Lang fan or a Paratici that I don't like Paratici. Obviously, I'm with the Don. I'm just trying to bring a bit of parity. Like it's difficult when the club go out and spend big money on players when Paratici was unearthing these like sort of hidden talents, if you will, right? But it's like, what can you do when in defense of Langer what can you do when the club's already kind of gone out and made these young signings, and we now need to go out and try and sign some more established players? Not that I'm saying that Brennan Johnson is an established player, right? He's one of these sort of in the middle. You've got to throw a bit of money at him because he's homegrown and he's 22. He's a Prem player. And to be fair to Langer, as we've said and the chat said, he's brought in Bergvall for not a lot of money. He's brought in Yang Min Hook for not a lot of money. Obviously, we don't know really anything about Yang Min Hook, or personally, I don't. He's only had a season and a half or whatever, so it's not exactly like he's had a great deal of time. And you know, it's not like every player, as we've said, that Paratici brought in was a huge success. And
when
there are players
Fabio
that we've
came
missed
in,
out.
though, Sam, I was just going to say, when Fabio came in, Fabio changed our season. He brought in 2 players called Rodrigo Bentancur and Kulusevski, right? Who, over the fans turned out and said, "Who the hell are they?" Right? And then they came in, changed our whole season, and we ended up getting 4th place based on those on those players coming in. He had an immediate impact on the club. And let's be honest, what we play for Bentancur and what we play for Kulu look like bargains now. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's not 1 or 2. And when I look at the squad now, it's still Fabio heavy.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, listen,
Yeah.
we all want Lange to do well, but for me, he's not in the same league.
Yeah.
He's just not.
Yeah, no, look, I'm not arguing that as well. I think you also like I'm actually surprised that you guys haven't touched on it because you guys are the youth experts. But you know, he made that big change saying that we had to start paying money to bolster our youth team, right? You know, he
Didn't even get
changed
to
the way
that one. Yeah.
he changed the way that the club was going about their business to try and get us on a similar level of the Man Cities and the Chelseas. And you know, think what you want about the potential youth factory that Chelsea have going on. They've made significant money from it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all about revenue streams and alternative revenue streams to try and tempt Daniel to loosen the purse strings and bring players in. So I'm not putting myself out to say, give Lange a break, you know, but at the same time, like it has also been 1 season. So I'm trying to reserve my judgment. I think it's easy to get lost in the sort of the Twitter sphere of people crying that, you know, we've not signed this and that. But I can remember many a season before Lange that we didn't sign anyone either, or anyone of significance when we needed, you know, as the old cliche goes, 1 or 2 players to elevate our team to the next level.
What I will say on that, Sam, is it's very important that we don't give Johan Lange too long either, to the extent that we gave Hitchin, where he pissed about with 400 million and what was it, 350 million of the club's coffers, absolutely wasted. You hear Carragher and Neville speak about on Sky Sports how far that actually sets a club back in terms of bad recruitment. 4, 5, 6 years it can, you know. And with Johan Lange, he had last January. You compare the signings he pulled in here last January. Dragusin, some would say, very good signing. Timo Werner, very underwhelming. Paratici pulled in Kulusevski and Bentancur and had a massive impact on our season. Werner didn't. You go into this summer, all he had to do was 4 or 5 positions. The remit was there. You look at it. Did he fail?
Can I just say,
and for the money he spent. So, you know, how long do you keep letting this go on for if you're not seeing the return on the football pitch? And that's, I get it, you know, in modern day football, you know, everything's nice and quick, turnovers very quickly. But because of the money that's in the game now and the money that these people are forking out, you can't afford to give someone like Johan Lange another 2 seasons to get this right. You know, he's got January, and if there's no improvements January, I'll be calling for him to go.
Listen, Dragusin was Fabio's. I'm sorry. Whoever told anyone that it was Lange's is talking out their backside.
Well, I think from the research I know,
I know, but he took him.
And, yeah.
Listen, he's known the parents. The parents are Olympic athletes, right? Both of Dragusin's parents are Olympic athletes. He was the guy who took him as a young kid to Juventus, okay, with Kulu and Bentancur. They all played there together. They were all in there together. He's had the relationship with him all the way through. So for him to suddenly get the credit for bringing Dragusin to the club is really pushing it.
I get what you're saying. I don't think he gets 100% credit because from the research I've done, you know, and from what I've read, basically it was off. Paratici had him on Tottenham shortlist, had him on the scouting data, but Johan Lange and Rob McKenzie went out and watched a couple of games that, you know, and then basically sanctioned the deal. But you're right, it was, you know, more or less off Paratici's team.
It's all off Parrot. It's all off Fabio. That play is all off of Fabio. There is no ifs, buts, or maybe. He took him there as a 15, 16-year-old kid from Romania. into Juventus, looked after him. He's watched him all the way, and that's how the deal managed to come apart. They have a relationship, and he has a relationship, as I said, with his mum, and I think her mum was a volleyball player. They're all Olympic athletes anyway. But listen, look, it's semantics. At the end of the day, I'm glad he's here, and we just got to hope that the recruitment carries on, a pace that helps us develop and move forward. Yeah. But we were talking before about is the recruitment that has been done on a par with what Fabio brought in enough to excite Romero to make him sign a new contract? And I don't believe it is.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think so either. I think, you'll find it very hard to find people that will justify that. But Jack, we'll let you answer Artist T here, and then
I was going to say
probably a lovely segue into the next section.
Yeah, I think we still have to answer Artist T here on just kind of sort of the ambition really for Spurs and kind of the next coming years in order to keep some of our best players. And I'd agree that, some of the guys that we have recruited are starting to look like potentially world-class players, if they're not already, in the case of Van de Ven, in the case of Romero, and maybe a couple more where they do look like they could end up being some of the best in their position around the Premier League, if not kind of Europe's top 5 leagues. And if that's the case, then you do need to show signs of improvement. You do need to show signs of ambition of either improving the squad around them, bringing in good competition, but then also showing that you are trying to challenge for every trophy, or at least challenging for a few trophies that can really elevate, I think, their game and elevate even the club's status to a degree that they would feel like that's the right place for them if they want to really progress their career. And at the moment, I think Spurs is a club that a lot of people would look at as a great place to progress their career, especially if they are younger players. But maybe guys like Romero, guys like Van de Ven, in a couple of years, we'll start to think about, is this the right place for me if I really do want to get to the very, very top of the game? And Spurs have to kind of meet them with that in that sort of trajectory. And I think at the moment they are. With Ange Postecoglou, I'm not so sure. I think Ange kind of still has to a degree, he's shown to be a very, very exciting talent in terms of what he can do tactically. I think he's brought an exciting sort of brand of football to Spurs, but I think that's still yet to be fully proven at the Premier League level, really. And I think with Ange, like kind of Sam said, I think he has to kind of deliver something either this year or next year, or at least at some point, in his time here, before he maybe gets, like a wandering eye, to another club or anything like that. Whereas it might be a bit of a different case with, I think, Romero or Van de Ven or some of those guys.
The chances are with Ange, with all due respect to him, we're probably the pinnacle of his career. There aren't going to be many teams that are higher up in terms of stature and position in one of the top leagues in the world, where they're going to go, let's go for Ange, especially if he fails. Look, and this may be harsh, but especially if he fails to win a trophy with us. It's not like anyone else has come in and done the same. We've had, supposed serial winners come in and have struggled. Obviously, the first season of Conte was very promising, and that quickly soured. But for the way that Ange plays, if it doesn't work, and I'm not just saying like for Spurs, I'm just saying, in general, if it doesn't work, it looks bad, because it looks, as I'm sure, maybe a couple of people on the panel will agree with, it looks sort of careless at times. And I think, Johnny, was it you saying in the group the other day about how he said if he could, he'd play 11 strikers on the pitch? And it's like, I said to you, that's probably the truest thing that Ange has ever said, because that is his ethos about football is attack first, defend second. And I think that the way that he sets up, he might not have ever said it like that, but the way that he sets up shows us that is how he thinks about football. And bigger teams will look at it and think, if you can't be pragmatic, then you're not the guy for us. Look at all these teams like Real Madrid. They've won 15 Champions Leagues, and I couldn't really remember a season of late where I've looked at them and thought, wow, you're the most unbelievable team going forward. They effectively shithouse a lot of games towards the final, and they have a sort of history of just getting over the line with mentality and you know, players that they've got, I would struggle to think that players of that sort of caliber and mentality would look at Ange coming in and think, yeah, this is really ambitious. He's going to take us the whole way. Things could turn pretty sour pretty quickly.
We do have a good question, you know, on David Pleat and sort of the recent news and kind of his quotes that he gave about Daniel Levy. Tottenham Hotspur last season did part ways with the 79-year-old consultant David Pleat at the end of last season. Chairman Daniel Levy did inform Pleat that his services were no longer needed, and this is apparently what Daniel Levy had said to David Pleat. You know, it's all data driven now. We don't need eyes and ears. And David Pleat basically responded, "What a nonsense." Is David Pleat correct in saying that scouting should be done more with the eyes and ears, or has maybe the data driven model shown to be the better way of scouting and recruiting over the last couple of years? What do you make of this, Johnny? Kind of the fact that maybe Daniel Levy is full in on the data.
Let's sack everybody, and let's get a few of the boys in, and we'll just play Football Manager. Yeah, okay.
Just recruit a computer for
Football
for
Manager,
scout.
and let's just let's save a few mil. Let's pack up shop. Look, I think it's BS, absolute BS. I'm sorry, right? Yes, data reveals a lot, without any doubt. I'm not going to argue with it, but eyes on the ground, okay? You can notice things, just like when you say, these are the stats for Spurs over the last 6 months. But they tell part of the story. It doesn't tell the story about our injuries or some of the teams or some of the events that had happened. So it's part of the story. And for me, eyes on the ground. My best friend is an agent, and I used to go with him to watch the games, the under-18s, and watch the kids. And, you know, I actually remember going to watch a game which David Pleat, funny enough, was at. It was the Watford under-18s. And I was watching the game, and I was chatting to this guy. I said, there's only one player on the pitch that I like. And he said, who's that? I said, that kid there. He said, that's my son. I said, what's his name? He said, Ashley Young. And he was 18, 17, 18, I think at the time. Yeah, it was probably 17. Hadn't even played for the first team at the time. And I remember chasing, my mate chasing David Pleat across the pitch, trying to get a conversation with him, because that was the early days of trying to be an agent. But there were lots of guys there on the pitch looking over players, and you can tell a lot. You know, it's not just about stats. What about attitude? What about posture? What about there's so many elements, you know, and data is, for me, is just one of them. You know, does he look like he's given his all? Does he look like he's working on 30% and you can draw more out of him? Is he working on maximum and really he's going to fall off? There's so many things. You know, is there another aspect of his game? Can we improve him? Can we take him to another level? Could he possibly be play another position? And I just don't understand this. And even putting that aside, to treat David Pleat, I know we did a little bit of curb crawling after hours, right? But, you know, that's his business. That's his business, right? What he does overnight. But really, what's that got to do with it? The guy is written a book that all the money is going to, I think, motor neurons disease, is it?
Finding cures, yeah.
Yeah, motor neurons disease. It's a worthy cause, a fantastic cause. And he's asked the guy he's worked for all these years and is meant to have a good relationship with, could I please put the book in my shop? And he said, no, because you are not a part of our book club or what have you. I say that all Spurs fans who are watching now should go out, go to Amazon and buy the book and make it a bloody bestseller. Go and make it a bestseller. I bet you there's enough stuff in there to keep most Spurs fans really interested in reading, because I'm sure there's more juicy stuff about what's gone on in Spurs. So not only will you be supporting a good cause, you'll be sticking it up to Daniel Levy, and you'll be learning some stuff about the club over the last few years. I think it's farcical. Sorry.
I think he's probably making room for an Eric Dyer autobiography instead, or something like that, instead of the David Pleat book. But Sam, on sort of the seeing eye test versus data-driven scouting, we're at the sort of divide, it feels like, in football, where, the data is kind of becoming very popular with clubs like Brighton, Brentford, and even Spurs have adopted it in the last few years. So much so that they basically thought that they don't even need guys like David Pleat on the ground anymore to look at players, to use that seeing eye test. Where do you stand on all this? Is there a fine sort of balance that you can strike, or do you think maybe the data-driven led models is actually the superior way of bringing in players?
Look, you definitely need some sort of balance to it, right? There's only so much you can tell from stats, because you can look at someone tearing it up in a league. Let's look at Gyökeres, right, as an example. I'm not saying I know anything about Gyökeres whether he'd be able to go into the Premier League or not, but he's scored 50 goals or whatever last season, and however many assists, and everything should have been saying, let's go sign this guy. Let's sign this guy. It doesn't matter what he's scoring 50 goals. He's getting 60 odd goal contributions, but no one did, right? So there's obviously got to be some sort of reason for that, whether it's just the money or what I don't know. But, again, you can look at all these players that have been signed over the years, and like look at Grealish, for example, right? Great player on his day, bags of talent, and had loads of potential. Maybe loves a drink too much, right? And fair play to him. No, I'm not here to say, don't enjoy your off time for these players who have effectively worked like they're robots and have no life outside of football. But these are the kind of things that you can't just get based on it. And I think that Ange sees that as well, which is why he's so driven to have these conversations with guys, right? And, we've praised him in the past for getting signings like Maddison over the line by showing them his mentality, whether or not you join us, we're going to be a new Spurs, right? And so you've got to strike up a fine balance. But at the same time, I'm not then saying that, stats are shit and you can't tell anything on stats, like rival fans will have you believe when you show them like a comparison between Saliba and Romero, for example, right? That shows that Romero is a better defender, whether or not you believe that or not. But yeah, I mean, look, whether you think stats are the way or eye test is the way, saying basically fuck off to a devoted servant of the club, and then pretty much hanging them out to dry when they're not even asking for a lot. Like, you know what I mean? We sell so much crap in the Spurs shop, and you won't sell a book that is written by someone who's devoted, decades to the club, given us the potential to go on and win.
Finished third under him.
Yeah, look, the guy's done all he can. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a avid Pleat follower and know everything he's done for the club, but the stuff that you hear, even if half of it is true, it just doesn't make for good writing and good reading for Daniel Levy, especially in the midst of all the crap that you read about Daniel anyway that makes you think that he's just a prick, like being one of the only clubs that oppose the cap on ticketing and stuff, and then this comes out sort of at the same time. It's like, what does he want from us? Like, he wants us to, accept him as the owner and think that he's got Spurs' best interests at heart, when all he shows is basically, if I can't get a piece of the pie, then jog on.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing to see that, we're a club that is run with someone with values like that. And again, I'm not even necessarily a Levy outer. I'm just a realist in that regard. I'm not going to sit back and say, yeah, I love everything about the guy or I hate everything about the guy. But, you can't deny what's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Can I just
For me,
add? Oh, go on. I was just going to say that, you know, I think a lot of people would then quote Brighton's model of data. You've got to understand that Tony Bloom, I know them, and Tony is a genius, right? He runs a huge betting empire, and his data was invented or created along with the Brentford chairman, to give them an advantage in their betting. So they had data coming in from all over the world, on players, on results, on everything. I mean, it's sort of in-depth AI, and that is a lot of the model that they use to identify the players.
Yeah.
But it was only a small proportion of the process. You know, Paul Barber, who was at Spurs and who Daniel stupidly let go, and who's now the CEO, or who runs the club at Brighton.
Yeah.
They look at every aspect of it. Who the player is, his background, his mannerisms, his attitude. Where would we play him? Right, he's not ready for the club now. Where could we send him? The type of club they're going to send him. They have a whole team of members within Brighton who monitor, go out and see the players who are out at foreign clubs on loan. It's a whole massive operation.
Yeah.
Yes, it's data led, and yes, Brentford's data led, but there's a whole added operation that goes on top of it. And I just wonder, why is it Spurs have suddenly so late to the data party? Why have we suddenly woken up to the data party, and why can't we run them side by side?
Yeah, for me, I feel like the stats are always a great starting point, because you can't always buy, whatever, no one can buy Mbappe, no one can buy, the next big thing that's already well improved. And you do often have to spend some of your budget on these unknowns, on these diamonds in the rough type of players. But then that's maybe a starting point is with the stats. You kind of look at a big data set of players that seem to be meeting the attributes that you're looking for in a player. But then that's after you do that, you then send out your David Pleats, your other scouts, to then do sort of the groundwork of finding out whether they are kind of matching up well with the stats and what it was supposed to be telling you. And then also you do check into the family background, into their personal lives, into their character, into their leadership skills, that type of thing. It is all encompassing. And I think what used to be the case is there wasn't much use of the stats. It kind of was just kind of hearsay about, oh, I heard this guy's good, I heard this guy's good over here. And it ended up kind of being the case that either really good players that might have shown well in the stats were falling through the cracks, and then you ended up paying over the top for somebody who wasn't actually that good. But you can't just then all of a sudden abandon the good work that scouts can do on the ground in trying to, basically prove maybe what the stats are showing. So there needs to be that balance there where you can't be too reliant on the stats, but then you also, I don't think, should be too reliant on the scouts either, because the scouts, like anything, will have bias. They will have, maybe certain preferences for a type of player over another. So there needs to be that balance between the both. For me, it's just stats should be the starting point, and then the scouts should have basically the final say after that. But I don't know about you, Dave. I think that's hopefully where Spurs are headed, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're just going to hire a computer basically as the scout.
Look, I think we'll do what Brighton does, but we'll try and refine the model and do a cheaper model. It's just the way our chairman operates. When you look at the model, right, and you look at Brentford and Brighton, what's so appealing about it? They don't miss in the transfer market. Very rarely miss. They buy very low and they sell for huge profits. That's what's appealing to Daniel Levy. And look, I'm not going to knock it because it's worked to a certain extent for Tottenham Hotspur so far. But like Johnny said, and like you're alluding to, Jack, there's plenty of other things that have to go alongside the data-driven analysis. But obviously, Daniel Levy thinks he can now sack the whole scouting department, sack the scouts that he's had everywhere else, and do it on a cheaper budget. And I just hope the clubs solely aren't relying on what the stats are telling them, because there's so much more to it. Look, in years gone by under Steve Hitchin, when it wasn't really data-led and stuff like that, look at the money we pissed about and look at the donkeys we brought in here. We're bringing in players that couldn't even stay on their 2 feet, could barely pass a ball 5 yards and stuff like that. So it was always going to be that Daniel Levy was always going to be open to a new way of doing things rather than shell out 350 million like he did under Steve Hitchin. Brentford and Brighton come along. But you also have to remember, they use that model to drag them up the pyramid, to keep them in the Premier League and hopefully sustain them there to a point where they can go further and further with it. Our model brought us to the point where we were just sitting in fifth outside Champions League. But what you don't need the model for is to add 4 or 5 quality players to this team to help drag it along. That's something most people have a general knowledge in the market for. And I feel like we let ourselves down this summer, that we sort of went back to that data-driven model when you didn't need to. You know, you have players like Eze sitting there. I don't care whether he moved or not.
Do you need data, Dave? Do you need data? Do you really need data to spot that, Eze? No.
Look, the data is good for the likes of Bergvall, Vescovic, people like that, you know. People that are maybe off the beaten track where you don't have scouts, you don't have that scouting network set up. That's where it's great for. But what it's not going to do, it's not going to identify the right players to bring in here to push you on to get over the line. What it doesn't do is, and what we see right now is, we've got a lot of talented players, right, who can all do the basics of football very, very well. They're silky on the eye. But what we don't have amongst any of them is a natural-born leadership out on the pitch. That's something that stats will not measure and will not bring you in. And there's other components that help make a team. So stats and the data-led driven, like the boys are saying, is good for a certain proportion, and I'd argue most clubs are going to go this way because the amount of money they spend on transfers, and they don't want to take these massive losses that some of them are taking in years gone by on players and stuff like that. So I think more and more clubs will adapt this. However, it's about us being the smartest guys in the room and using it to elevate us to that next level and get back to the club that everyone wanted to be, like we were under Pochettino. So where I'm at with it, I think it's good. I like the modern way we're going along about it, but there's certain things where you do need the scouts on the ground for, which is to go out and find that leader on the football pitch to bring it all together and stuff like that.
Can I just say one thing I'm really worried about? For years, Tottenham have missed quality young players on their doorstep that have gone to Arsenal, that have gone to Chelsea, that have gone to West Ham. When I say on our doorstep, I mean on our doorstep, in our borough. Yeah. Right? Well, they're all recruiting. Are we really... when Fabio came in, he tried to address it. He got rid of all the Instagram kids who were there filling up. We've got a Tottenham Academy. Well, there's no point having an academy if it's just Instagram kids taking photographs. Look at me, I'm at the Tottenham Academy. If they're not ever going to go anywhere. We cleared it out and we started recruiting. I said when he first came in, his mission to recruit the top 15, 16 to 19-year-olds in the country for the academy and the first team. That was the directive. And, that's what happened. For Spurs to spend £2 million on Will Lancashire was unheard of. It would never have happened before. Never under the old regime. Break the wage structure, pay Mikey more, right, than what he would have got because he would have left. We had... Romain Mundell, okay? He left because he didn't believe in the system. He didn't believe he was of value. And then suddenly it changed and we started paying them. We got them all to sign now. If we start getting rid of talent scouts for the younger ages as well, I fear that we're going to slip back to where we were before. We've got the model right for our academy. We're finally producing players. Yes, a lot of them haven't come through yet, but I'm confident there will be players that even if they do not make our first team, will bring money in. Just like whether it's a Parrot or the like. I believe they will bring it in. We cannot let it slip. I'm hoping the model will stay as it is. But Y Scout's great. But it, for youth football, 13s to 16s.
Yeah, you need more eyes and ears on the ground in that situation and kind of more word of mouth. I'd agree. Just wanted to get to Paul Markey's super chat from earlier and also say hello to Johnny Stokes here. He's joined the chat. Big up to John, member for 31 months. Evening, Dave, Jack, Johnny, Sam. Come on, you Spurs. John, thanks for not getting sick of us after 31 months. Appreciate your support. And thanks for all the support that you've shown Dave and I over this longevity that you've given this channel, and hopefully you are keeping well this North London Derby week and aren't too nervous like some of the rest of the Spurs fan base. Hopefully you're quietly confident like some of the people were in the channel predictions that Dave and I recorded earlier today. Paul Markey, though, with a question, and we did have something, kind of related to what Johnny maybe tweeted a long time ago and got in trouble for, kind of about the recent form, maybe under Ange Postecoglou. So I thought maybe we combine the two and then we go on to the members' questions and wrap this show up. Paul Markey says, Ange is inflexible on tactics, and we all know a rod that doesn't bend breaks. He needs a plan B and C. Paul, or sorry, not Paul, Johnny, what do you make of Paul Markey's thoughts on Ange's inflexibility?
Right. Well, I'll give you one bit of flexibility. I had an argument with my son earlier this evening, and he just says, you hate Ange. I said, look, I don't hate Ange. I want Ange to succeed. My point is, we're playing Newcastle. Before the game, I said, look, it's obvious, okay? We got no Mickey van der Ven. We're playing a Newcastle team with Isak, Barnes and Gordon. Pace to burn, pace to hurt us. If we play on that high line, on the halfway line, it's going to be a ball over the top. It's going to hurt us. If we drop 10 yards deeper and the ball comes over the top, it gives a chance for Vicario to run out of the goal and play like a sweeper keeper, play high line outside of his box or on the edge of his box and give us half a chance and give the defenders half a chance. But no, we continue to play that high line. Yes, we had 101 different chances. We all know about the chances, but let's not kid ourselves. Newcastle had some very good chances of their own. And, when you play against top teams, I actually think even Brentford, Thomas Frank is a fantastic coach. He's got probably 3 or 4 different methods of playing teams. And, we'll have Brian Abuemo and Wissa probably playing on the shoulders to give us trouble. You have to have a plan and think about your opposition. But Ange says, I don't think about the opposition. This is how we're going to play and we'll concentrate on our game. I find it kind of strange. The one positive that I noticed is Montgomery has come in and we do look better at set pieces in the first 3 games.
Somewhat.
Better. I didn't say good. I didn't say good. I said better. Yeah.
I think when it comes to the set pieces, actually, just quickly, I think we've conceded. We're not going to be able to compete with most teams aerially. So what we've actually done is packed the line, packed in and around the goal to, get that breaking ball or block that breaking shot, which has helped absolutely massively. But where I disagree is, I get that people maybe want Ange Postecoglou to maybe be a bit more flexible on his tactics, but he's not as stubborn as people make out. How many times has he made changes at halftime? How many times has he, against Newcastle there, he played Son up front, played Kulusevski up front, tried things to try and get us going and stuff. He does make adjustments, maybe they're more reactive adjustments than proactive, like maybe what Johnny's alluding to, rather than sit there and maybe counter the opposition. He more reacts to it once the situation has occurred. But he does react. And I think maybe one thing we have to maybe wash our hands with is you look at a lot of the top managers. Guardiola adapted his system over time, but he's got the very best players to work with. Jurgen Klopp made certain adaptations, but to a large degree, played more or less the same football that he tried to implement when he first started there. And with modern day managers, a lot of them are going to stick to their beliefs, and when I think people just have to wash their hands with that because they only have such a short time to impress. And they're not like the old Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, where they're hiring and firing staff, making, every signing they bring in is one that they've identified and stuff like that. Managers are working with mainly what the clubs are providing them to work with, bar maybe 2 or 3 players that are initially given to them to try and help implement their system. And that's why more managers are more inclined to stick with their way, because even if it doesn't work out at Tottenham, another club will look at that and say, okay, we'll take the opportunity because we like what it's about, and we're going to give him what he needs to be able to implement it to its fullest. I think, where I sort of feel sorry for Postecoglou to a large degree is his system relies on a striker. Now, many fans last summer were telling me he doesn't need a striker. Ange doesn't rely on strikers. But he does, and he said that himself. But we sold Harry Kane, and we never replaced him properly, which meant large parts of last season, even when we weren't dominating games, we weren't scoring anywhere near enough goals or taking anywhere near enough chances, which was leading to some of the defeats. And, when you look at the points we've dropped this season, The amount of chances we had before Leicester to put the game to bed, we didn't. The same with Newcastle the other day. And that's where our defeats are coming about. The amount of goals we conceded late last season is because we're not taking our chances. But have the club done enough to bring in the quality players in the forward line to help implement the system to its fullest? You look at the summer transfer window. I don't think we've done. I think we let him down in that forward area again. And at that point, what do you want the guy to do? There is only so much he can do. We can sit here and say we want him to be more defensive. We had defensive managers. Spurs fans will not tolerate it.
It's a balance, though, isn't there, Dave? Is there not a balance, Dave? Is there not a balance?
Look, Pochettino, you would argue, had the right balance, right? He played good attacking football, but we were defensive solid. Look at the record we kept at White Hart Lane. But look at the players he had to work with. He's had Tottenham's best ever 11 at his disposal to be able to work. Do you
think that's the worst defence, though? Joking aside, right? I mean, I truly believe that if you gave Pochettino that back five, they would be as effective and as solid as they were with Jan Vertonghen and Toby. That's my personal.
To be honest with you, where I think it's a bit different, Johnny, is I think it's the midfield personally. When you look at the one Pochettino
you mean
had,
the screening?
Yeah, the screening. Because when you go back and look at Pochettino's system, people moan about the fullbacks that we're playing now, high, stuff like that. But Pochettino's fullbacks were high and up the pitch. It was. But what he did do is Wanyama dropped in between the centre backs to make a back three. So anything that came out wide, Vertonghen went out one side, Toby Alderweireld went out the other side to try and sniff it out. You also had Moussa Dembele, who was a great hybrid between a very good sort of CDM, but could also carry the ball. In the midfield, we lack that. And I think that's our biggest problem for this system to work. But again, do I put that all on Ange Postecoglou? Most fans were screaming for a CDM. Did the club bring one in this summer to the best of their ability to help that? I'm not quite so sure. When you look at Arsenal, whether people like Rice or not, they brought him in. It screens that back four. Rodri from Man City does the exact same. And I think that's where I think Postecoglou has been let down. I feel sorry for him for a large degree, just like I did Conte. Conte had a world-class forward players, but he had the crap backline to work with. And it's like we flipped the script. We've now brought in an attacking manager, but give him average attackers to work with, but with world-class defenders. But he's not going to sit up to protect that goal. He's going to sit up to go and score goals. It's the way
he's asked for those players, though. He's asked for those players, Dave. When you look at Timo on the dance floor, Brennan Johnson, Odegaard, and Solanke. So there's a lot of money that's been spent there on that. He's authorised those. I felt against the Newcastle game, the turning point of that game was when he brought on Tonali and Hall in the middle of the park, when Basuma was on a yellow, Maddison was on a yellow, Kulu was looking very tired, making a lot of errant passes, and he didn't react. And I felt that at those points when Tonali and Hall came on, that the whole game changed. Yes, we dominated vast swathes of the game. Yes, we should have buried the game. But I didn't feel the reaction was the right reaction to that game. It was too slow to react. And by the time he reacted, the game was over. And, I was surprised that Archie Gray never got a minute in that game, because we, saw Kulu had 2 or 3 chances in that last 10 minutes to set players free and chose the wrong option because he looked really tired. But listen, look, it's nitpicking. It's nitpicking. I think that, when we get Mickey van der Ven back and when we get Solanke up front, we'll get a truer picture of where we are. My only question is, should a team fall apart and the whole system fall apart because we lose Mickey van der Ven as that defender? And my argument is no team should be reliant on one guy and the pace of Mickey van der Ven to get us out of trouble. Drop deeper if he's not playing. Tweak your system slightly to allow for that loss. That's all I'm saying, and it doesn't seem to be that he's going to do that. And let's hope he's right.
You could say that technically Spurs have probably shown, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, slightly less reliance on Van de Ven, because I think we defended actually quite well for the most part with Dragic and Romero. It was just two really bad moments of kind of either incommunication or just lapses of concentration from them. But for the most part, like Newcastle, were pretty neutralized in that second half from Ange's tactics. And the only
They had a lot of chances.
in the first half, I would say, but not as much in the second half. You could argue that. I think
It
we
wasn't
really
even
overwhelmed them.
necessarily in the first half. It was like the first 15 minutes of the game, and then we kind of got a footing in the game. I think that the most glaring thing for me is we have a system where it requires you to be 100% like perfect. You can't make mistakes because every mistake that we make ends up in the goal, right? And it doesn't matter if the team has one shot or 30 shots, we will concede a chance with them a ball over the top. Either someone's sleeping, or the fullbacks are up the pitch or playing wherever they're playing, and I'll keep beating that drum until my knuckles bleed. Our system doesn't allow for mistakes, and that I think is what could potentially be Ange's downfall. No player is going to go the entire season without making mistakes, right? And in fact, not many players go the whole game without making mistakes. And the way that we play, which I'm happy with, right? I like the fact that we're going for blood, right? But it means that, you miss one press in the middle and Joe Ellington plays a 60-yard pass through our team and a pacey striker or a winger gets on it and they score a goal. Or, we look to play a ball in behind when we've got a 5-on-2, we mess up the pass and suddenly our entire team is caught out because we've set up to go, we're going to strangle the life out of this attack. And then you miss one pass like we saw a lot last season. Son would misplace a pass or Maddison would misplace a pass. And the next thing they're in behind on our goal. And it's frustrating because it is repeated over and over again. And I was actually very angry after the Newcastle thing. I thought I'd kind of gotten over it, but I think maybe I'm working myself up again. But it's just frustrating because other than that first 15 minutes, as Johnny alluded to, and once we got the equalizer, they had like sort of 5 minutes of sort of coming back into the game. And I agree, once they brought on Tonali and Hall, taking off most of their players that had bookings against most of our midfield had been booked. It just completely swung. And I'm not necessarily blaming Ange. I don't think that he needed to bring on Archie Gray to make the change or whatever. I actually thought Bentancur was the right sub. Obviously, he then got booked after like 5 minutes as well. So your game plan's out the window for a bit more defensive stability. I don't necessarily think that Archie Gray, look, he's a potential, right? He's got all this hype behind him. I've not seen a lot of him play, so I can't say.
I think he's a really top player, personally.
Yeah, no, look, don't get me wrong, Johnny. I'm not saying, I was happy that we signed, that we went out and signed one of these kind of players before they're worth 90 million after making their move, right? But from what I've seen in so far in preseason, I'm not sure that he is that line breaker. I personally would have pushed Kulu back up front and brought on another midfielder to sort of change it a little bit, push Son back out on the wing. I think that Werner was the mistake personally, because I felt like he came on and he didn't do a lot of pressing. And when he does press, he basically just goes.
It was anonymous, wasn't he, Sam?
He did absolutely nothing. And when you actually look at people are saying, oh, Maddison missed his press in the midfield, which, yeah, granted he did. If you actually look at Werner's position, he's just kind of standing there. He's near no player, and he doesn't make an attempt to even make a run either towards the ball or back towards goal. And in the end, he's just a passenger. So I was frustrated that he was the sub that came on. I did think that Odebear had tired. But as I say, I would have pushed Son back out and put Kulu up front, although I didn't actually think that in the first half Kulu was that effective. But, it's all about moments, right? So with
So,
Ange, like,
so I was just laughing. I was just laughing because there was a moment in there when you talk about moments. I was just laughing because it just took me back to Sunday football when your striker hasn't turned up because he's been on the piss, right? And he says, I can't make it. And you turn up and you say to your left back, look, we haven't got a striker. Do you mind playing up front this week? And he goes, yeah, okay. And the ball comes over and he can't decide. The ball's come over. He's at the far post. Should I head it? Should I? What should I do? And he goes like that, and nothing happens. And that's what happened with Odegaard. I mean, all he needed to do was stand up and chest it. He could have chested it in.
yeah,
And you just feel that a quality player, even a young player, should have the football IQ to have even chested it. You could see he was mad with himself afterwards. But for me, it was like I was laughing because, like, I haven't seen anything like that, as I said, since Sunday morning football, when the guy doesn't know what to do with the ball. Do I head it? Do I kick it? Do I chest it? And in the end, he sort of need it.
See, this is where I find it hard to blame Ange on some of these things, because some of the things that you highlight there, Johnny, and Sam highlights, these are individual players. Ange can't be screaming from the touchline, go with that with your head. He's never going to hear him, first of all. But second of all, and this is where I feel sorry for Ange to a degree. And I think this is where we're going to have to show a lot of patience this year at this squad, because you are relying on some young players, and with young players comes inconsistencies.
That's what I was going to say.
You're going to have to allow them to grow. Sorry, Jack, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say the exact same thing with Odegaard. I understand what Johnny is saying about kind of, the fact that he did have that moment where he didn't know what to do. But that's what I was going to say. A young player, no matter how talented they are, they've actually only been in that position so many times in their career, especially under that immense amount of pressure as well, where they will have those sort of, fluctuations of either, looking composed or looking completely, out of sorts, really. And I think that's just what comes with young, talented players, no matter how good they are. There are only so many young players that even will look consistent in those sort of moments. I think what comes with that territory is they'll look amazing one game, and then the next game they'll look like they don't even know what they're doing. And so you have to have that patience with them. Whereas the more proven here and now players, they'll put that away pretty much every single time. And that's just comes with the experience of being in those positions over years and years and years, and being able to work on it on that sort of level. Whereas Odegaard, to me, looks like a real talent. It's just that when you are just a talent, you only have been, played in the back post in a game against Newcastle so many times in your career. In fact, that might have been the most high pressure game he might have played in, to be honest, like in his career so far, despite only being, 21 or whatever. I think he's only 19, right? 19. So
19.
How many times is he going to be playing in an atmosphere like that, under pressure like that, after having a good game? He is going to learn from these moments. And I think that's what comes with the patience of being a young player at Spurs, and to a degree with someone like Ange Postecoglou, like Dave was saying. Like, Ange is putting these young players in these really good positions to succeed, but they aren't always going to deliver for him. And it does feel like he's sometimes getting the blame for that. And I don't really think that's entirely on Ange. Like, he is trying to help them succeed, but they do have to meet him halfway. And I think as Spurs fans, we also have to meet them halfway and realize that this is going to be a season of patience, and we are going to have some frustrations, but we can't go over the top, I think, with it as well.
When you say patience, are you talking about in the injury room, or patience?
Certainly, definitely a long list. But with this medical team, they seem to enjoy having a long list of them. Yeah, Dave, you were going to touch on that.
No, fly, work away.
Okay, Ball Marquee saying Brennan Johnson should go into a knitting club, and that's his level. Well, I was going to say maybe on the sidelines, he might be doing some knitting because he comes on as an impact player. And maybe if he does have some ball and yarn, he can look at the game, sort of analyze what's going on, how he can impact it. Because so far, Brennan Johnson, Dave and I, we don't show him tons of praise, as people probably point out, but Dave and I have been consistent that he does seem to be a good impact player for Spurs. I don't know why that is, but he comes on and he seems to know how to make an impact quite quickly in games and sort of offer something different, or just kind of come in with a fresh enthusiasm or whatever it might be. And maybe he just needs a ball and yarn for the first half, and then he comes in the second half and knits together some crosses and some good moments for Spurs.
Well, it would have been good. Maybe Brennan could have knitted Odegaard a jumper and he would have scored.
Or even at the end there, he
yards.
could have knitted in a nice finish. He almost scored the winner for us, or could have gotten us a very good goal towards the end there before we ended up losing all 3 points.
I mean, look, where I will and ours is
We're only
that
just
he does seem to he will drop players, and that's something that I think that we've sort of complained about managers in the past, that they won't sort of not necessarily admit defeat, but accept that someone's not pulling their weight. And I thought that Brennan was probably our best player on the day when he came on, right? And if you did have an actual striker in there who was making the right runs, he probably would have got another assist at least, because that Son one where Son drops deep, which I also don't, I just wanted to touch on quickly about that. I don't necessarily blame either player for that, because I've seen instances in the past where Son has dropped deep, it's drawn the defenders away, and then the player makes the run to the back post, and the Brennan Johnson type pass is then able to go across the box, right? But if you had someone like Solanke or Richarlison getting in there, and they're a striker, so they're gonna make that sort of dart into the 6-yard box, I do think that we would have got something out of that. So I don't blame Ange for the defeat. I think there was some naivety in there, but I also think that St. James's Park is one of the hardest places to go in the Premier League, probably in football, right? Especially when the crowd is up. And we were missing at least 2 key components of our team, being Van der Ven and a striker. So you can criticize Ange, but you've also got to give him the credit and the sort of can't think of the word right now, but you got to give it. You got to sort of ease off a little bit where there is problems.
I think where Ange deserves a bit of time is, look, Harry Kane and Son carried this football club in terms of attacking responsibilities, and now that Kane's gone and it's only left his son, and I tried to highlight this before. No matter how good one player is, it's a team effort up in the front line. You need at least someone else to be able to work with on your level and stuff like that. And I think because we're undertaking a rebuild in the forward line, I do think this is where Ange needs a bit of time to find the right personnel that will blend and hopefully try and take us forward. Now, look, whether we have that at our disposal or not is another thing to be seen. But I do think this is where Postecoglou does deserve some patience. It wasn't his fault the club sold Harry Kane and left him with that void to fill and stuff like that. But also when it comes to Johnson, just quickly, I see a lot of people praising that ball that he whipped across the 6-yard box. But where I think many people are getting it wrong, like Sam alluded to, Son pulled the centre-backs with him. He pulled them away from Johnson. What he's doing there is creating space for Johnson to go into, bear down and goal and have a shot. Johnson took 2 poor touches, which forced him out wide to put the cross in. If he would have took the touches correctly, which I've been banging on about that he can't seem to do, he's in on goal and he gets a shot off on goal. So I think many people are actually praising Brennan Johnson when they shouldn't be. They should have actually be critical of it and him not taking the right touches. And again, it comes down to the inconsistencies because we're not buying top-level players. That's all I'm going to say on Johnson. Not going to get into any more debate about it. If anybody thinks I'm wrong, come back at me on other live shows.
I saw someone say Brennan Johnson he's equally the most hated and loved player of all time, at Spurs. And I thought that's so true, because you get these people who, they can't.
He's the new Højbjerg.
Yeah, exactly. They can't give him any credit. And then you have the people who look at people giving him no credit and have to go over the top. Whereas he's just your average 23-year-old Premier League player, I think. He does nothing super bad, and he does not a lot super good either, right? He's consistently average, I'd put it. And you guys know, I think Brennan could be a good player for us. I don't think he's an amazing player, but I think that in the system he can do a job. But if you're going to be on his back, I'm not saying, when I say you, I'm not meaning you guys specifically. But if you're going to be on his back, he's always going to have this. He had to deactivate his Twitter at some point, didn't he? And his Instagram comments and everything. So, he's clearly struggling right now. And the bench probably is the right place for him to allow us to kind of get going a little bit. And then, he can come in and hopefully make an impact and take on from there. But we'll leave it at that.
No, exactly right. I think that's a great way to end it there, Sam, and very balanced from yourself. But we do have some members' questions to get through. We'll take these one by one. Thank you to all the members for supporting this channel and for getting in your questions. If you didn't know this, if you are a recent member, for all these live show panel shows, we do try to get in, beforehand to give you guys a chance to have some questions for us that can be related to what we've been talking about or not related, basically what you guys want answers to. And it's a great perk that Dave and I are trying to do to give back to you guys. But we'll go to Scotty Hynam, who is in, I think, Cure first, or at least one of them. He's just thrown in a come on you Spurs. But thanks, Scotty, for the support. Vince Vega saying best of luck tonight. I've got work. We'll come on to chat FPL late in the week. We need to see where the folks are at. Well, we'll see. Indeed, Vince Vega. We tried to do some sort of FPL wrap up at the end of the international break. And maybe we could see if we can find the time, with this North London Derby hectic schedule for a bit of an extra update on that. But Vince Vega, by the way, I've been meaning to plug this, and I will try to do it in the community section when I can remember. He's actually starting his own FPL podcast, and I actually thought has a great name, so I'll make sure to plug that in the community section. Ryan Trestane saying, what are the chances of us beating Arsenal, and what's the score going to be? I think we will lose 3-0 just because they have better players, unfortunately. Can't see us winning. Sam, I'm going to come right back to you. You take Brian's here. What's your Arsenal prediction?
I'm going to stick my neck out. I think we're going to win, and I think it's going to be... You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to say 3-1. I know that's like the most common scoreline. I have been watching Arsenal quite a lot. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but they've kind of become a glorified long ball team. Which, okay, look, I know that kind of goes against everything I've been saying, that we get caught out by long balls, but I'm looking at it, right? Okay, so they've got Odegaard out, which means that realistically, who have they got to play in that 10 other than Havertz, right? So Havertz is now taken out of his sort of target man position, and he's going to have to play a more midfield role, which I don't know if that will suit him in this kind of game. These. I'm going to list out my reasons why I think that we're going to win the game, right? It also all depends on how Maddison, and if he starts Basuma, how Basuma play, because we're going to need to control that midfield. A midfield three of Havertz, Jorginho, and Partey, I think is get outable, right? If that's a word. If our players are on their game, we're a more dynamic midfield. We're more athletic, and we can actually do it. Like them playing a Rice and Partey, that's a different story, right? But even Marino, from the limited sort of stuff I've seen from him and at the Euros, he looked like a good player. So that's another big loss. They've also lost one of their centre backs that they enjoy playing, with basically as a glorified Sheffield United tactic, playing 4 centre backs across the back. So their left side is going to be weak. We can get at Zinchenko, let's be honest. He in my opinion is a very average defender. He's a solid player. I think he's got good ability on the ball, but he's an average defender, and we can and should be bullying him down that side. And whether it's Johnston or Odegaard or whoever plays there, maybe even Kulu, we've hopefully with Solanke playing, we've just got to go past him and get that ball in, and I think that we can do it. Their centre backs and what's his name, Benny Blanco, Orange Ben. They're solid players. They're big players, and they can be bullies. But you can't win a game with a few players, right? So if we can put in a performance all around the pitch and not make stupid mistakes, I think that we can win this one and actually make a bit of a statement going forward.
And then Conga here to you, maybe Johnny. Who do you want to see start versus Arsenal? I'm especially interested in what midfielders and attackers you'd like to see start. What's your midfield and what's your front line?
For me, I think Bentancur is a better player than Basuma. Sorry. I think he's better in the transition between picking the ball up from Romero and delivering it to the front. That is old Bentancur. Whether or not he can recapture that form, I don't think there was anyone better. He was just unbelievable in that form from when he came. And then those first few months before the World Cup, he was our best player I did a poll. He was voted best player at Tottenham at that time, ahead of Harry Kane. And so I would start him. I'd be tempted to play Bentancur and Basuma, to be honest with you. I'm getting a bit tired of Maddison. I hope he comes good. Is he going to drop Sarr? Listen, I think whatever happens there, they're going to pack out that midfield. I think they're going to be happy to give us possession. I think they're going to do exactly what they did against Manchester City. They will suck us in. You can have the ball as much as you want. We'll sit on the edge of our box with Saliba, Gabriel and our defenders, and we will try and catch you on the break with Martinelli, with Saka and Trossard. And I think that's exactly how they're going to play it. Now, if we know that that's how they're going to play it, then let's err on the side of caution. Let's not throw everybody forward. I think it's going to be a narrow victory for us. I'm going to go 2-1, but I expect to see Solanke. I can tell you that Richie is back running. Okay. I'm not saying he's going to make the bench, but I can tell you he's back running. Okay.
That's progress.
So it's progress, right? Okay. But he mustn't rush him forward, right? I'd rather he didn't play now. He didn't play then against Coventry, and he's back the following week to get back onto the pitch. But so Solanke, he's probably going to go. Well, for me, I think you have to go Sonny on the left, Solanke through the middle, and I would play Odegaard on the right-hand side, and I would bring on Brenda at in the second half, along with. Listen, I would be bold. Personally, I'd be bold, and I would start with Bergvall, right, in that midfield. That's me personally, and I just want to give Maddison a wake-up call. The fact that he's still not even making that England squad, and some of the players that are in there, Morgan Gibb White, Angel Gomez, and the rest, says to me that he needs to up his game. So that would be my front line. But don't get me started on what I would really do, because I personally would be playing Pedro Porro as my right winger, right? Because personally, I think he would absolutely destroy teams. He'd be whipping the ball in, and he's like Perisic. He does not need to beat his man to whip the ball in. He can whip the ball in from a standing position. And I would either play Archie Gray or Spence in that inverted right wing back, and I would drop both. I wouldn't play Odegaard, nor would I start Johnson. But that's me, because I actually think Pedro Porro would absolutely destroy teams playing on that side.
And to you, Dave, Moondog, this one, he's saying, good evening, Dave and Jack. Do you think Ange sees the same defending mistakes that we can see? And is he even addressing them? The reason I ask is because the same mistakes keep on happening. Come on, you Spurs.
I think he sees them, but I think the answer is in the press conference. The other day he's saying, with the performances, the results come. It comes down to us being clinical up the other end. And I think, like everything, you're clinical up the other end. You don't even speak about some of the mistakes that are happening down the other end. And I think that's our biggest problem right now, is that forward line, And look, I could see us sleepwalking into it 2 summers ago, when we were talking about selling Harry Kane. I knew it was going to become a huge problem. And I think that is our biggest problem right now. And to be brutally honest, I don't think we've done anything in the window to really address it, bring in that CDM that's going to screen it, and I don't think Ange is going to do what a Pochettino done with a CDM, get him to sit in back between the 2 centre-backs. And I think the same shit's going to continue. I just think the only hope for me this season is that we we take our chances up the other end, and then you're not really having so much conversations about the defensive side of the game. At the end of the day, you have to score goals to win games, and we can barely score one right now, let alone a couple. So, until we address that, I think it's going to continue to be a problem. But like I said, I don't think the defense is our problem. I think it's up front is our problem.
And then Maddie's saying, big up, Dave and Jack. Which trophy would you most want Spurs to win this season? I say Europa League, as it comes with a Champions League football spot next season. I still want us to finish top 4, don't get me wrong, but that would be my preference if I did have a choice. I'm not asking about the North London Derby, as I'm going with my son, and 3 points is what he's getting for his birthday present. Happy birthday to the son, Matt, and hopefully you guys have a wonderful time there and get to make it a raucous atmosphere. Hopefully he gets to have plenty of memories as well from a good North London derby. So best of luck to you guys, and hopefully you guys have a terrific time. For me, yes, I think the Europa League is actually the competition I truly care about actually this year. I think with the domestic cups, the League Cup, as well as the FA Cup, yes, you can go deep into it, but you always still end up coming up against a Man City, a Liverpool, teams that, we could technically beat on our day, but always will be tough challenges, especially when those games come in kind of the middle of the season. I think the Europa League is a very achievable trophy for us this year. It's still going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. There's still plenty of ways to slip up and embarrass yourself, but I think it is a competition that is kind of suited to our level. And I think even the style of play that we have is actually suited to that competition, because I'm not sure if many of these teams that come up against, the quality of players we have would be able to handle also the intensity of the type of style that Ange Postecoglou has. So for me, the Europa League is a must, and I'm not really that much caring about the top 4 really this year. I think the Europa League is really where my priorities lie. That's for me, Matt. And then on to the next one. Lee Harvey saying, evening, David Jack. There have been rumors Van de Ven and Solanke are out of the North London Derby. If that's the case, we should sack the entire medical team. I'm not sure.
What medical team? We don't have a medical team. We have a bunch of vets.
Look, it took us nearly 30 years to sack Geoff Scott, so I wouldn't be rushing down to the bookies to put any bets on. Look, to be honest with you, from what I understand is, I think Johnny's correct that Richarlison is only back running, won't be fit for the North London Derby, but I think Solanke and Van de Ven will be back.
They should be back from what we heard, Lee, but if you end up being correct, we'll have to come back to you and apologize. MB Joker Davis saying, do you think Johnson should start on the right against Arsenal after that performance against Newcastle, where he was the best attacking player in that game? What do you think, Sam?
On the right bench. That's where he should start.
The right section of the bench.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tough one, to be honest, because if you listen to a lot of the fans, they think that Kulusevski should be nowhere near the right wing position anymore. They think he should be in that midfield. I'm kind of inclined to agree with that. But then if you go on that assumption, that Kulusevski is the one of the midfielders, then you're either left with Johnson or Odegaard. And I personally thought that Odegaard was not great against Newcastle. The chance that he missed aside, I wasn't super impressed. And I'm not saying that I think he's a bad player, because as we've sort of said before, he's young. I wonder if it might just be a bit too big an ask to play a player with that little experience against them, although he has the right kind of attributes that I would want to see running against Zinchenko. That is what I'm thinking. But if I'm going on it based on Johnson's form of this season and towards the end of last season, I would want him on the bench, I think. So I think I would take the risk and play Odegaard personally. I just think that Johnson, one half a performance is not enough to get you your place back on the team. You've got to show consistent, improvement over a few games. And look, if he then comes on off the bench and has as good a game as he did against Newcastle, in my opinion, then I probably would start him in the next game, the next Premier League game, because I don't think it really matters about who you're going to play there against Coventry. With no disrespect, we should be beating them with our second string. I know football doesn't work like that, but that is what it is. But I think I'll go Odegaard right wing, and I think Johnson should stay on the bench.
And I think Johnny answered a version of this one, so I'll pass this one to Dave, and then Johnny can have the last one. Dave, what do you think the midfield should be against Arsenal?
Oh, look, I'd go with Basuma. I think, look, Basuma, Madison starts and Postecoglou's midfield. There, his two favourite selections. I think the only one you're really talking about is the third choice. I think for this game, I would go Bentancur in there. I think he'll give us both defensive and attacking what we need in that midfield.
Yeah, and you could argue Bentancur maybe is in better form than Pat Matasar, if you wanted to go that far. Matheson Edwards, though, Johnny's asking, did you catch Danny Rose's interview? What did you make of it, specifically the comments about the wage structure when comparing it to England teammates, and also his last season where he was frozen out? It looks like it will be a similar thing happening to Sergio Reguilón.
I had to Google Danny Rose to check out who he was, actually.
Don't do him dirty like that.
Listen, I've got to be honest with you. I think it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. I don't get it. Okay. Sergio Reguilón, right? Real Madrid, Tottenham Hotspur, right? You know, the one thing he's good at, Reguilón, was going forward and making crosses, okay? He was told after the Barcelona game last season, where he had a really good game, that he was going to be part of the plans. 2 days later, he's told he's going to Man United. He goes to Man United. Man United fans all gave him a glowing report. They thought Luke Shaw and Malacia were going to come back. Malacia broke down again. Ten Hag said he regretted sending him back. Thomas Frank took him to Brentford, and if you ask Thomas Frank, he thought it was a fantastic loan and he really brought something to the club. I think he got 3 or 4 assists, can't remember exactly, but he definitely gave something to their attack. Now, if you're telling me we've got no left back, okay, we got no left back. We got Ben Davies. I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept the guy who runs our book club, right, playing at left back, okay. Sergio Reguilón should be playing, or should be a member of our squad, and he should be covering that left-sided position. I just do not get it. And I'm telling you right now, if Destiny Udogie gets injured, right, and we, God forbid, something happens to Mickey, you know, we're going to have to play Spence on that side. And listen, don't get me started on that, honestly, because I'm really annoyed about what they've done to Spence. I won't go into too much detail, but he was told he can't go on loan to a club. Can't say the club, but he was definitely going to be a first-team player. He was told he can't go. So you can imagine his disappointment yet again by this club when he's told he's not going to be in the European team. Just the same as when he was signed for the club, he told he was going to be very much part of the first team. And the second he turned up at the club, they tried to get rid of him and send him out on loan. You know, you got to treat players right. I don't understand the mentality of ostracizing him, but he's the manager. There's nothing we can do. And as for the trophy that was asked before, the greenest stadium in Europe trophy, you'll never seen that. That's our trophy. That's what.
Or the most well-run club. You know, that was another one that we've recently got.
You'll never.
Guys, what about the Tiger Cup?
The Tiger Cup. Yeah, listen, you never beat the Audi Cup.
We win the Simon Jordan Trophy of Approval, it feels like, every single year.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that's our show. Thank you so much to the members for sending in these questions. Thanks so much to Sam as well as Johnny for being a part of this and making these panel shows possible. Let's give them a moment, you know, to be able to plug themselves here, and we'll put in some links. Johnny, we'll start with yourself. I mean, you have a huge presence on the social medias.
Hang on, I'm plugging myself in. Hang on.
We actually have our scout on the ground, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm fried. I'm fried, actually. You can find me on X or Twitter or Elon Musk, Johnny H3232, and you can find me on Insta or on TikTok. Let's Talk Tottenham 1882, where I post videos and stuff, and obviously guest on your guys' show and with Sean whenever he's around on the Spurs Talk Show, and with Brian on Tottenham on Tour. Yeah, I don't have my own channel, but I'm a traveller.
You should have your own channel. It's a crime, and I know everyone's been saying it to you as well.
I know. I should start one up. But listen, I love being a guest with you guys, and it's nice and easy, and it's started with Sam, and I've been enjoying every minute of it. So thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate it, guys. And you look next week was when we're going to have the North London Derby and the Carabao Cup to sort of talk about. So we'll have plenty to talk about next week. But Johnny, thank you very much for giving up your time. I know you're a very busy man and also a man in demand. This guy will be on Last Word on Spurs over the next coming week as well. So make sure you look out for that. Get
next
across,
Thursday.
show your love and your support.
Next Thursday.
So make sure you get across, show him your love and your support, because I know a lot of people really do like listening into Johnny and what he has to say. But also get onto his Twitter, puts out some good tweets there, plenty of engagement underneath if that's what you're looking for. But also, does these sounds and stuff like that, little chat shows on Twitter and stuff like that. So make sure you get across and become a part of that. And Sam, thank you for your time, my man. What have you got?
Well, when you said Johnny's got his sounds there, I was thinking, whoa, is Johnny this beatboxer that we don't know about, and he's got this special hidden skill?
What's the right word for him, Johnny? What's the right word for him on Twitter? Chats or whatever it's called. Yeah, whatever.
Spaces.
Spaces. Okay. Yeah, no, look, obviously, thank you for having me on. You've given me my space in the Spurs community, so I'll be forever grateful for that. I've enjoyed learning from you all, Johnny especially, hearing some of the stuff that little tidbits that you've got to throw in. Obviously, always very interesting. That's my Twitter below. Would appreciate a couple of follows, because at the moment, most of my follows seem to be like sex bots, and they're not really getting my like.
What are you complaining about?
It's the jersey.
Well, it's like every day I've got a new follow, and it's like some random like naked lady in the picture with like XXX in the name, and I'm just like, wonder if this is.
It was actually a guy in Nigeria.
They're just waiting for me to slip up one day. But yeah, no, look, I mean, on Twitter, I engage with the occasional delusion that I see when I see people saying stuff about players, and I said it before. I try to bring some sort of balance, or I hope that I try to bring some sort of balance to both sides of the Tottenham coin on Twitter. I don't want to be too positive, and I also don't want to be too negative. I'm sure if you ask Johnny, he'll say I'm definitely on the positive side, and I'm not ashamed of that.
You shouldn't be. People support the club the way they want.
Yeah, look, exactly. And I'm not here to tell you, if you're feeling negative about the club, then sort of piss off, or if you're feeling positive about the club, you're what's wrong with the club. So. As Dave just said, you can support the club any way you want. So, if you want to get on and see some of my opinions, they're getting a bit lost in the Twitter space. So, would appreciate some views. And if you similarly, if you have a sort of show like this and you want to get me on, I'm available. As long as it doesn't clash with these boys, then I'm there.
Very nice.
But yeah, thank you for having me on, guys, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for being consistent. You've always been available for us, and we really appreciate that. And you're always eager to come on as well, which is exactly the attitude that we're looking for. So everybody, show Sam some love, please. Spurs Undercover is his Twitter handle. The link is in the chat there. Please head on over. And also Johnny's Instagram, as well as his Twitter, is in there. But Dave, there we are. There's our panel show ahead of the North London Derby. The impending game is coming upon us. We will probably have a North London Derby chat, I believe, tomorrow with lead judges. So that's what I would plug for ourselves here for people to take a look at. But I think apart from that, we'll see everybody tomorrow.
2-1 for me. That's my prediction. 2-1 Tottenham. Sam was 3-1. What are you guys? Sorry, I didn't hear your prediction.
Yeah, you hid behind it. You never gave it to us.
Do you know what? I'm quietly confident heading into this one. I think we will win. I think we'll take advantage of their midfielders being out. And at some point, we've got to take our chances. It's going to click. I think it has to be the North London Derby. I think there's huge pressure on it. I think if it's not, like I said, I think there's going to be a knock-on effect next month, and I think it could go very bad for Tottenham tits up. But I think we're going to win this, and I'm going to go Tottenham 3-1. I'm going to follow Sam's lead on this. However, I can't wait. Make sure you keep uploading plenty of pre-match footage for us, Johnny, let us know what the atmosphere.
Well, come on, Jack. What are you saying?
I was going to say, Dave stole mine. He stole my 3-1. I was going to go for a 3-1. I think because Ange needs a win. The players need a big win. There has to be that sort of combined energy and combined probably adrenaline for this game. After dropping points against Newcastle, you hope they come out the gates really strong and we blow them away quickly with 2 goals and then probably end up conceding because that's been the kind of the nature of Spurs of recent. And then we go on and push for a third.
Yeah. No, look, I can hopefully a good weekend. What I will say to Spurs fans is manifest it. I'm a true believer in manifestation. If you manifest something enough, it's bound to come true. And lastly, every gunner's a runner. Do not forget that. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on,
the
you
big
Spurs.
hands we trust.
Come on, you Spurs.
We never
Bring
stop.
on the Ashburton army.
Come on, Spurs.
Come on. We'll see you all back here tomorrow. Pull out the Solanke, the little bow and arrow. See you later,
There's
guys.
no we see so lanky and not so wanky.